Trauma acts as a threat to an individual's well-being, thereby activating a neurobiological stress response. Studies have shown there to be alterations in memory and brain function following traumatic stress. In his research, Bruce Perry noted the brain develops sequentially, and its plasticity allows it to learn and develop in relationship to what and whom it is exposed to within its environment. When it comes to traumatic stress, changes occur in brain areas such as the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex. To help better understand how each of these are affected by trauma, let's discuss each one in more detail. The hippocampus plays an essential role in learning new information and memory formation. The hippocampus of a healthy individual readily encodes and retrieves information. However, during and after exposure to a traumatic experience, hyperarousal can result in difficulty regulating memories. In this case, the memories may be processed abnormally, leading to intrusive thoughts, nightmares, an inability to recall memories, or even selective amnesia. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, plays an essential role in fundamental cognitive processes which contribute to learning. It's where processes called executive functions occur. These executive functions involve planning, working memory, perspective taking, and other higher-order cognitive functions. Research has shown that children with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, had reduced total cerebral gray volume, and that high cortisol levels were associated with reduced left ventral PFC gray volume. With smaller prefrontal cortex volumes leading to reduced executive functioning skills, students demonstrate more problem behaviors such as inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. The amygdala part of the brain is always on the lookout for anything that might indicate potential harm. Think of the amygdala like a watchdog in your brain. If it detects potential danger, it sets off the fear response, which acts like an alarm in your body. Many scientists refer to this as survival mode, when the brain triggers a flight, fight, or freeze response. When the brain is triggered by a threat, or the perception of a threat, it releases chemicals into the body, setting off the survival mode. However, when released in large doses, the chemicals become toxic to the body and can lead to significant developmental impairment. This area of the brain is responsible for receiving and delivering sensory input for anything that appears to be a threat, and consequently leads to emotionally reacting to an event, including sometimes displaying a lack of behavioral control through verbal and physical aggression. Essentially, when something is presented to an individual that is perceived as alarming, stressful, or threatening, the amygdala triggers a fight-or-flight response as a form of protection. Dean is a sophomore who witnessed domestic violence in his home until he was 14. Dean's dad assaulted his mother with a deadly weapon, which resulted in her hospitalization. Currently, his dad is in prison. Because of this, Dean becomes physically and verbally aggressive anytime he feels threatened by his peers. He's been in many fights at school and served several days of suspension. His educational team is considering a placement in an alternative school. Although the amygdala is necessary for human survival, students who have experienced trauma may regularly be in a heightened state of arousal. It's not uncommon for students who have trauma to misinterpret input, assign it to traumatic memories, and then react in harmful ways. It's also important to understand that students who are triggered by trauma are likely to demonstrate poor impulse control, difficulty in recognizing emotional signals of classmates and educators, and are often uncertain about trusting peers and adults. In many cases, students who have trauma may develop an impaired view of themselves and the environment around them. For example, Ginger is a 5th grade student who endured years of physical and verbal abuse from her mother until she was sent to live with her grandma. Because of the verbal abuse, Ginger consistently perceives herself as a failure and feels as if everyone around her is looking for her to do something wrong to call her out on it. Now, Ginger has become somewhat of a perfectionist and demonstrates worry in making mistakes. One way to understand how the brain processes trauma can be explained through neuroscientist McLean, who introduced the triune brain framework. He describes this as a model dividing the brain into 3 major structural parts, each presented sequentially according to the development of the area of the brain from the oldest to newest area. The oldest and lowest region of the brain is located in the brainstem. It's referred to as the reptilian or primitive brain, and it's responsible for basic human survival skills, including maintaining all physical functions such as heart rate, breathing, sleeping, feeling pain, eating, drinking, and defecating. Just above this region of the brain lies the limbic system, referred to as the emotional part of the brain, whereby individuals begin to interpret their experiences, interactions, and emotions within this area of the brain. This is also where the amygdala, often referred to as the body's built-in emergency alarm, is housed. This area of the brain is responsible for receiving and delivering sensory input for anything that appears to be a threat, which leads to emotionally reacting to an event, including sometimes displaying a lack of behavioral control through verbal and physical aggression. When something is presented to an individual that is perceived as alarming, stressful, or threatening, the amygdala triggers the fight-or-flight response as a form of protection. During this stage, physical symptoms include an increase in alertness, adrenaline, heart rate, agitated state, muscle stiffness, and the ability to take immediate physical action in response to stress. Some students may even describe feeling an out-of-body experience referred to as dissociation, which is also described as a freeze response, where the brain has become so overloaded with emotional responses that the individual is overwhelmed to a state of immobility and helplessness. For example, Finn is a kindergarten student who lives with his mother. His house is very busy with people coming in and out of the home because his mother sells drugs, and on some nights, his mother will even host drug parties. Finn often has a hard time sleeping during these parties because he's afraid someone will come into his room and hurt him, because that has happened in the past. Consequently, when Finn attends school the next day, he will typically appear to be withdrawn, and will often refuse to participate in learning or other class activities. In fact, periodically, he'll fall asleep in class.